Hi, welcome back. Let's decorate a jar. Put some beautiful lavender napkin on there, a little bit of color, some polka dots to give it some extra pizzazz. This jar was bought at the Dollar Tree. The next one is actually a Mario olive jar. If you hit the down arrow, you will see the products that I used. I'm going to wash this jar with this alcohol. It can be any grade of alcohol. Soap and water works well too. It's just getting the oil off of it from our fingerprints. This rubber band will help us keep the top where the lid screws on from getting paint on it. I'm going to use a white multi-surface paint and this sponge to apply it. The multi-surface paint actually adheres to glass permanently, and it helps all the rest of the paints that you use on top, whether they're multi-purpose or not, to adhere without peeling off. Now, I am going to cover the whole jar. I do put 3 coats on. I like it to be very opaque. It's hard for me to get under the rim right there, so we're actually going to use a paintbrush. We just need a good coat of the multi-purpose paint on there. Now you can see the bubbles that the sponge causes here. Just tap those down with your sponge. Don't put any more paint on it, and it will come out very smooth with just a slight texture, which is great for decoupage. Do the same thing with the lid. Man, I'm going really fast there. All right, here's the napkin that I used. The link is above in the little text box. So I'm going to cut out this section here because I liked the way that it looked. You can do this with sunflowers. You can do this with anything. Bunny rabbits, dogs, patterns, designs, acorns, leaves. I just really liked this lavender pattern. There is a ridge on this. I guess it's a shelf, so I'm trying to cut right to the bottom of that shelf here. And then there's an extension of lavender hanging off, so I'm trimming around that too. I'm not being real precise in cutting, but I find if I go in and out of the petals a little bit, the napkin's completely invisible. All right, there it is. Now there's going to be 3-ply napkin, so you're going to take off 2 layers. And discard those 2, and there's my finished product. This one just happens to fit all the way around the jar. My jar has a little dent at the top, or I don't know, it's a notch of some kind, and that's going to be the back of my jar. Done with the rubber band, but we're going to use it on the bottom of the jar to line the napkin up as we're gluing it on. I find if I don't have something to line it up with, I get crooked at the end, and then I feel like the whole thing's messed up. See, there's the little dent, the little notch in my jar. So I'm lining it up on the rubber band, and that's the way I'm going to put it on. Now, I decided to put one of these patterns on the lid, so let's cut it out now. I picked this one. Oh, that's going to be pretty. Now again, don't forget to take off the first and the second ply. It's going to look like this. All right. Let's get started with the decoupage now. I'm making sure to start this napkin at the notch so it's in the back. I'm going to use satin Mod Podge. Satin makes the napkins look better and it shows less flaws than a glossy one will. So you're going to put your Mod Podge on in a thin layer. but wet enough for it to stick well, and I simply use my fingers to rub it into place. Gently. You'll find out exactly how much Mod Podge will work for you. And I do one section at a time. Just roll my jar around as I go. Here I'm just kind of pressing it down onto the jar. It has a tendency sometimes to get bubbles underneath, so I keep pressing as it's drying. I sure do love this lavender pattern. I'm going to trim up right at the end so it looks like it's just in this pot's in front of the other little pot. It gives it a good finished look. All right. So there it is. It is in place. Now some of the edges didn't have Mod Podge underneath them, so I'm going to go back and make sure that they're all adhered to the jar. It's kind of easier just to put the Mod Podge on top at this point. Little bubbles happen underneath, and so I'm using Mod Podge on my brush to kind of brush it down into place. And I'm making sure that the part where the rubber band was is all glued to the jar also. And there you have it. It's looking good. Okay, I'm going to put on a second coat of Mod Podge. This can be just a little bit thicker, and I'm using a little bit of pressure on my brush to make sure any bubbles that do keep showing up are gone. As soon as it becomes a little bit dry again to the touch, I will use my fingers to press it down. If it's wet, you can have a tendency to tear it. It's really hard to tell what I'm doing right here, but if you're looking at the jar as it's standing up, you can see a curve in between each of the lines right there. And so I put a pencil outline and I'm going to paint that. You'll see in just a couple minutes exactly how it's going to look. This is my third coat of decoupage and final coat. Now I want to screw the lid on before I decoupage on the design on top, because I want to make sure that it's in the front of the jar. So when you screw the lid on, every time you screw it on, it's going to end at the same place. And now I have it where it will be in the front of the jar. All right. Second coat of decoupage. Somehow on the lid, it seems to go a little easier. Now I'm using, literally, it's called lavender paint. You can cover the whole white section if you want to. I just chose to leave it white, just an extra step. And now you can see exactly what I'm talking about on making the scallops. They're not hard to do. I'm using a flat brush. And then when I'm doing the very edge, I like to go to a number 8 round. Look at that. I want to make sure the white goes all the way up to the neck of the jar. So I'm just touching that up right here. Sorry, the angle's hard for you to exactly see what I'm doing. But now it's nice and smooth. That little shelf that I was talking about has a gray line on the bottom. And some of the places it was really light. And so I'm just adding a little gray to put that line back on. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Just needs to be there because it gives a separation that's really, really nice when you're finished. Okay, using another rubber band. And I'm going to use that as my stopping point for the purple that I'm going to paint on the bottom. It's best not to paint over the rubber band. If you can just paint up to it and make sure it's smooth. If you put too much paint next to the rubber band, it causes this ridge and it's kind of hard to smooth out, and you're going to have to go back and manually touch it up. I do go around the bottom just along the edges, and you can paint the whole bottom purple if you want to. Okay. This is a little touch that I like to do. I'm going to cut out another one of the lavender plants. And I'm going to put it on the bottom of the jar. Again, make sure it's facing the front when you turn it over. Can never have too much lavender. Okay, I'm going to paint the side of the lid with the lavender paint. Again, I'm leaving the bottom round lip part of this lid white, but you can paint it purple. Get rid of that extra step of having to be careful with your lines. Oops, cleaning up a little bit of a mess up. Q-tips are wonderful for that. Okay, there's the jar. Now, if you like it like that, you could literally stop right there. But anyone who knows me knows that I like to make dots. So I have this dotting tool. It's got a large dot and a small dot. And I'm going to start with the large end and put one dot at the point all the way around the jar. Each time I make one of these dots, I dip it into the paint. That one was kind of messy, so I'm redoing it. Okay. Now I'm using the small end, and I'm dipping it in the paint once, and I'm making 5 dots up towards the middle, both directions. Dip it in the paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dip it in the paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's not perfect and you can only fit 4 or you do 6, you're going to be just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Can actually go that fast once you get the hang of doing this. And this is a cake pop stick. You can use any stick. It's kind of a medium-sized one. Doesn't have to be exact. Even a pencil eraser might work for you. I'm going to put it at the top of each of these scallops. Okay. Now I'm going to line it up on the bottom of each of those ones that are on the top. I decided to fill in just a little bit more, so in between each of these big dots, I simply put 3 small dots in a line. You can do any pattern you want. Now this is a popsicle stick. It just needs to be smaller than the larger dot that you put down. We're going to put the lavender in the center. But you want that white dot to show all the way around. See there? Re-dip it in the paint with each dot so you have the same amount of paint on all of them. Lightly touch it too. Don't press down really hard. It makes a nice little round mound. I keep dotting. I put little dots around the white edge. Now I'm putting the purple in the middle of the big dots on the bottom. And I'm going to use the small edge of the dotting tool now and put a white dot in the center of each of the purple dots. Just gives it dimension and a finished look. Well, I can't stop there, can I? I'm going to put small dots all the way around on the lid. I am re-dipping every single dot that I make so they're all the same size. If you get a lot of paint on your stylus, go ahead and just wipe it off with a towel. Don't forget to put the white dots on the ones on the bottom, and we'll be finished with all of our dots. Now I'm using the Americana satin finish, and I'm going to coat the whole jar with this. You won't have a sticky feel from the decoupage, and it dries beautifully. You can hand wash this. Make sure it goes all the way up to the edges where the paint is. I'm making sure I get it all over the jar in a very good even coat. Don't forget to do the bottom. And you have finished the jar. These are the 3 that I have. I gave the green one to my mom. That was Mother's Day. And it's got the important stuff in it. Yes, Hershey's chocolate. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like, and I'll be doing a mermaid on a rock next.